Congressman, was finished my...
Yeah, I like that. You can speak as long as you want. He told me before I came up, you got 5-10 minutes, but my wife told me that before I left, so if I end on time, you please report it back. General, that was amazing. That is awesome. Now, General Cardin's doing an incredible job. His predecessor as well. It's interesting because both of them are carrying on the same duty. I think they conspired. See, my son was in the Guard because of the job he has. He's traveling all the time, so he left back in May. And General Gerard, every time he saw me, he said, "Hey, when's that young Loudermilk getting back in the Guard?" Here's what General Cardin told me when we walked in today. He said, "When's that young Loudermilk getting back in the Guard?" We're working on it.
We're still hard, Cardin. Still hard.
I want to say how much I appreciate the invitation to be here. It is such an honor to be able to celebrate this incredible moment with you, especially on this day. You may not realize it, but today is also Gold Star Mom's Day. And we owe so much to them. Not just their sons, daughters that have given their life for this country, but for their legacy, what they did. Look, they wouldn't have gone and defended this nation had not been raised the right way. And we forget a lot about what it means to be home. Look, there is nothing more exciting to me than when I get to come home. I get to be with normal people for to start with. To get out of Washington, D.C., but just to be at home. That's why I put a lot of emphasis in Washington that even our staff members who were from, we have several from Georgia because I took them up there. I wanted them to understand what it's like to be home. There's a different mentality in Washington, D.C. I tell them, you got to get out of there and get to real America. I even have a test. We do occasionally hire folks that aren't from Georgia. And Commander, you'll appreciate this. There's 2 questions I ask every person who isn't from Georgia that comes to work on our staff.
Where's the chicken?
Number one is, what is the plural of y'all? It's all y'all. And the second is, what is the most significant landmark in Cobb County, Georgia? Because if you don't know that it's the big chicken, you're going to learn it. In fact, I emphasize that so much when we brought our DC staff down last year. They all insisted of going to the big chicken and getting a picture. Back in June, I was probably given one of the greatest honors that I've ever been given in Congress or possibly in my life. As delegation on the 75th anniversary of D-Day. Especially a great honor for me is not only being a veteran, but that my dad served there. He was a medic in the 100th Medical Evacuation Hospital. And I remember as we were staying in Paris and we were commuting to Normandy each day. And on June the 6th, we took buses and got on Chinook helicopters and we started flying from Paris to Normandy. But the Army pilots took us a more direct route. We got over the coast of Normandy and they dropped the back doors, so we were looking down upon the beaches. All the way from the point where the British and the Canadians landed down to Omaha Beach and Point Dock. Before we turned and we landed at the U.S. Cemetery, we went and took our place for the President's speech. But as we were flying along the coast, I couldn't help but think of not only those men that died there, but the fact that they willingly died there. And I kept thinking, if you haven't been there, there are still artifacts there that is a constant reminder of what happened. I could look out over on the side and you could still see gun emplacements from the Nazis. There's still pillboxes there. You still see craters from the bombardment. There's still the concrete docks that were brought in to offload the equipment after we secured the beachhead. And then as you get to Omaha Beach, there are rows and rows and rows of headstones and white crosses. Those are the ones who didn't get to go. There are many that probably here, I imagine there's a good number of your massive membership that aren't originally from Georgia. But one thing I've seen about the American Legion, it doesn't matter which Legion Hall I go to, I feel like I'm part of family. And that's what's so important about the American Legion and even the other organizations, is no matter where you are, you can feel you're at home, that you have a home. Because home is really where your family is. And I've never met another Legionnaire that when you didn't start talking, you realize you're both members of the American Legion, that there's an immediate camaraderie between you. I see that with veterans all across, because we share something that others never have an opportunity to understand. Because when you really think about, to really put it in perspective, and you think about those Higgins boats pulling up to the beaches on at Omaha Beach, and when those ramps fell down, there had to be something greater than themselves to drive them to step off of those boats and hit that shore. And that was the love of something greater than themselves. It's called freedom. Because they were giving their lives for something that they enjoyed, that they wanted to make sure they passed on to the next generation. That's why if I'm ever invited to a veterans event and I can't make it, there's something that's keeping me from it. Because I'm going to do my best to be there. Why? Because we owe it. We owe the gratitude to you, to all who have served. Because it's everyone who served brought something back. And it's something the world can't understand always. It's the memories of those that didn't come back. It's the horrors of what we've seen and experienced. It's understanding that dedication. It's something else that I've often thought of, that I wish people would understand about those who served in the military and are still serving today. Because I'm asked that quite often. Why is the American Legion so important to veterans? Why is it that people just don't get out of the military, stay out? It's something that I think is embedded in us from the very moment that you take the oath of office. Because if you look at that oath of office, and we raise our right hand, and we swear that we will defend the Constitution, it's something that's put inside of your soul. But there's also something that is not in that oath of office we take that I think is just as important. There's no expiration date. Because to me, that oath is an oath for life. And if the heads that are nodding in here, I can tell you it is for you as well. We're always going to owe that debt of gratitude to those who are serving and those who have served. Because freedom isn't free, and it's never going to be free. And it's always going to require struggle and bloodshed and fighting. My dad told me, he said, when we were preparing in England, we were training and preparing for the invasion, he said the enemy wasn't shooting at us then, not from Normandy. He said when we got on the ships across the channel, the Nazis weren't shooting at us from Normandy then. When we loaded on the landing craft and were making our way to the shores, they weren't shooting at us then. But as soon as we started taking the ground, that's when they started shooting. And he told me, he said, son, you're going to go through things in your life and things are going to get tough, but just remember this. The harder things are, the closer you are to the target. Because that's when the enemy fights the hardest. We're going through some tough times in our country. You know why? Because freedom isn't free. And if we're going to defend not only freedom, but those values that you heard talked about here today, those things the commissioner talked about, those traditional American ideals and values, it's going to take some fighting. It's going to take some standing firm. And I can tell you, as I look across this room here, there's nobody else I'd rather be in this battle than